Lotus. To ask about a refill with your prescriptions, press 1.
We've got voting encounters aplenty. We got spell pings and partners galore. If you want haste or theft to upset them, underplayed commanders. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, thank you. I realized it's been about a year since we made a video talking about underplayed commanders and their decks. We talk about obscure cards, we talk about budget cards, we talk about budget commanders, we talk about unique deck themes, we talk about obscure cards and deck themes. For some reason, underplayed commanders kind of went under the radar for a bit. So we're back. Welcome to the Commander Deck Junkyard. So today we're taking a look at 6 underplayed commanders and their decks that are the black sheeps of the format. And I'm not talking commanders that have under 10k decks. I'm not talking commanders that have under 5k decks. Shit, I'm not even talking about commanders that have under 1k decks. Today's batch of commanders have less than 500 decks on EDH Rec. And we're gonna take a look at them today. So if you've been looking for some underplayed commanders to bring to the pod, perfect video for you. We got timestamps down below on the timeline. Make sure to subscribe. Let's get into it. Up first for our underplayed commanders is Lita, Mechanical Engineer, which has 424 decks on EDH Rec. Lita, Mechanical Engineer is 2 and a white for a 3/3 Vigilance. At the beginning of your end step, untap each other artifact creature you control, pay 3 and a white, tapper, create a 5/5 colorless vehicle artifact token named Zeppelin with flying and crew 3. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a pretty unique commander and actually pretty strong, and for mono white, we will take both of those things. I think it's grossly underplayed for how both of those things it is. Welcome to the video. This deck's gonna run vehicles like Aerial Surveyor, being a 2 and a white 3/4 flying that crews for 2. Whenever Aerial Surveyor attacks, if defending player controls more lands than you, search your library for a plains and put it into play tapped. Nautiloid Ship, a 4-drop 5/5 flying with crew 3. When it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard, and when Nautiloid Ship deals combat damage to a player, you may put a creature card exiled with it into play. How about some big boys like the Parhelion 2, being a 6 and 2 white 5/5 flying first strike vigilance crew 4. When it attacks, create 2 4/4 angels with flying and vigilance that are attacking. Or the Pridewind Steel Flagship, being a 4 and 2 white 6/6 flying crew 2. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white human knight creature token with. This creature gets +2/+2 as long as an artifact entered the battlefield this turn. And those little 2/2s that vehicle makes is a perfect segue into another package you're going to want to put into this deck, which I like to call the Pit Crew. These are going to be all your creatures or tokens that you make to help you crew your vehicles, because that's kind of a necessity. You can't just run vehicles because not really a way to turn them on. So running stuff like Cloudspire Captain, being a 2 and a white 2/3 that gives your mounts and vehicles +1/+1, and this creature saddles mounts and vehicles as though its power were 2 greater, makes a great option, along with cards like Hotshot Mechanic, being a 1-drop 2/1 that crews as if its power were 2 greater, or cards like Wizened Mentor that create a 1/1 white zombie whenever an opponent activates an ability of a permanent that isn't a mana ability, which will give you a steady stream of just consistent 1/1s being made. You can use those 1/1s to crew your vehicles. All these are great options to make up your little pit crew here. Or as I would say when I was like 8 years old, you could be the next Dale Heartworm Jr. On top of the pit crew and the vehicles, we're going to be running some general artifact synergy because we're going to be playing a lot of artifacts. So stuff like Armed with Armor is insane in this deck. 1 and a white instant, turn all your vehicles into creatures. Then you can like choose a dwarf you control and attach a bunch of stuff to it. We don't care about that part. 1 and a white to turn all of our vehicles into creatures. This will win you games. Stuff like Shimmermere lets us play our artifacts at instant speed, and stuff like Sculpting Steel can enter as any artifact or vehicle that we have on our side of the board that we may need in a pinch. There's a ton of sick mono white stuff you can run in like an artifact vehicle deck, come to find out. I do have like mock-up rough draft versions of all the decks we're going to talk about today down in the Moxfield list if you want to look at those and get some ideas. If you've got any ideas for this list or any of the lists we're going to talk about today, drop them down in the comments. And with that, let's move on to the second underplayed commander. Underplayed commander number 2 is Xava Rakdos Blood Witch with 416 decks. Xava is 2, a black and a red for a 3/3 first strike haste unleash, so you can have it enter with a 1/1 counter. If you do, it cannot block, and each other creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it has haste. I get this one, why it's kind of underran. There's been a ton of like cool, I think specifically Rakdos, Gruul, or Jund commanders that kind of interact with this same ballpark of giving stuff haste, being very aggressive. I think she does offer a unique-ish ability of giving all your creatures with a 1/1 counter on them haste, which works really well with some mechanics that have been printed since this card was printed, which I think makes this a way better deck than it was or had been for many years, so it might have gotten pushed into the aisles of history. But I have brought it back. So creatures that ETB and just have counters on them are gonna be very, very strong, and who would have guessed it? Giving them haste interacts really, really powerfully with a lot of these. Bloatfly Swarm is 3 and a black for a 0/0, enters with 5 1/1 counters on it. If damage would be dealt to Bloatfly Swarm while it has 1/1 counters on it, prevent that damage, remove that many 1/1 counters from it, then give each player a rad counter for each 1/1 counter removed this way. Or a card I can't stop talking about for some reason recently, Siegfried Famed Swordsman is very good. 3 and a black, 2/2, Menace, enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards, then put X 1/1 counters on him where X is twice the number of creatures in your graveyard. Yeah, if we just got 4 creatures chilling in there, he gets 8 counters. He's a 10/10 Menace with our commander 10/10 Menace haste for 4. Sure. What about Ignition Team, dude? 5 and 2 red, 0/0, enters with a 1/1 counter where X is the number of tapped lands on the battlefield. Yeah, not under your control, on the battlefield. Then you can pay 2 and a red, remove a 1/1 counter from Ignition Team. Target land becomes a 4/4 red elemental until end of turn, and it's still a land. My favorite that I came across, though, was Aetherborn Marauder being 3 and a black, 2/2, flying, lifelink. When it enters the battlefield, move any number of 1/1 counters from any other permanents you control onto Aetherborn Marauder. So if we have that Bloatfly and we have that Ignition Team and we have, like, let's say 15 counters, we can just drop this and be like, oh, what? I have a 17/17 flying lifelink haste? What? I'm all of a sudden back in the game, boys? Bring. We've also got a few ways to give global 1/1 counters. This is to possibly enable haste for some of our creatures that don't enter with 1/1 counters. It's mainly to interact with our modification package, which we'll talk about after this. Stuff like Agatha's Soul Cauldron, you can start putting 1/1 counters by exiling creatures from your graveyard. Drana puts a 1/1 on your whole board when it attacks. Geth Scaled Scorch has all your creatures enter with a 1/1 counter on them, equal to the amount of opponents that lost life this turn. And Uncivil Unrest has all non-token creatures you control gain Riot, which means they can enter the battlefield with a 1/1 counter or haste. And look at that, in our deck, we get both. So with all these counters and counter interaction, of course, we run the brand new stuff that cares about modified that came out in Kamigawa. I think this was the big reason I think this deck could be ran more. Stuff like Aki Battle Squad, 5 and a red, 6/6, when 1 or more modified creatures you control attack, untap all modified creatures you control. After this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. Or something like Thundering Raiju being 2 and 2 red, 3/3, haste. When it attacks, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Then Thundering Raiju deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures you control other than Thundering Raiju. Or you feel like playing an 8-drop, 8/8 trample that's going to cost 1 less for each modified creature you control and has hexproof as long as it's untapped. Sure. I think you've got a very interesting, super aggressive Rakdos list that kind of itches a part of my brain. Rakdos normally doesn't itch too much, so I think this is interesting. Again, if you've got any suggestions for a deck like this, drop them in the comments. You can check out a little mock-up, rough draft version of these decks down in the description. And with that, let's move on to Underplayed Commander number 3. Coming in with 483 decks, Underplayed Commander number 3 is Elrond of the White Council, being 3 a green and a blue for a 3/3. When he enters the battlefield, each player secretly votes for Fellowship or Aid. Then those votes are revealed. For each Fellowship vote, the voter chooses a creature they control, and you gain control of that creature. That creature gains, this creature can't attack its owner. Then for each Aid vote, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Most of the time, people are gonna have like little tokens here or there, or like small utility creatures here or there. They're gonna just probably choose the Fellowship one, choose their little creature, give it to you. Maybe this is a non-starter, maybe this deck isn't the best. But then when you look into it, you just run it as a blink token deck. You just flood your side of the board. If they give you tokens, who cares? That's more bodies on your side for you to bash their face with. You always vote for Aid, and you give 1/1 counters to your entire board, and hopefully, or not even hopefully, because you run so much blink, you will force opponents to start giving you good options, or they have to add additional 1/1 counters to your full board. Neither one's gonna be great. Plus, Blink is really nice because it acts as protection, which with a 5-drop commander feels really nice, because if anyone tries to remove it, you can just not only blink it to protect it, you'll also just get another trigger out of it. Very nice. So we're gonna run the Blink classics like Blur, 2 and a blue, exile target creature you control, return it into play, draw a card. Stuff like Deadeye Navigator, 4 and 2 blue, 5/5 Soul Bond. Both creatures have 1 and a blue, exile this creature, return it back into play. Displacer Kitten, turning our non-creature spells into additional Blink. Stuff like Essence Flux, Planar Incision, Siren's Ruse. It's a huge, the rough draft version of the deck that I built down below runs 12, so I think we've got plenty of ways to be blinking stuff. But what's really cool here, as someone pointed out in one of my videos, and I feel like I might have replied to it gutturally. I might have been too big of it. Might have drawn it out of the old drew the pistol out too quick there. Someone said that 2 of the decks I built on the Power on a Budget video were too reliant on the commander, and like when the commander wasn't out, the deck didn't fire off. And my reply to that was like, yep, some decks are like that. But then I'm like, no, that was a pretty good point. Maybe I should take that into account and change some of my future builds. So this deck, yes, the big theme is you're playing Elrond and you're blinking Hellrond over and over to steal stuff or buff your creatures, but also has the follow-up theme of you run a ton of other creatures that just ETB and make you tokens, so even if Elrond's not on the field, you can just continue to blink those, do the token strategy anyway, and then when you build up enough mana to just play Elrond again out of command zone, your strategy can still do its thing. So, thank you for the suggestion. My bad on the comment. So, creatures like Avengers Zendikar being 5 and 2 green, 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, make a 0/1 plant for each land you control. Whenever a land enters, put a 1/1 counter on each plant you control. Yeah, blinking that's going to be a good alternative to blinking our commander. Deep Forest Hermit, 3 and 2 green. When it enters, make 4/1/1 squirrels. Gruff Triplets, 3 and 3 green, being a 3/3 trample. When it enters the battlefield, if it isn't a token, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. This one can get disgusting because when Gruff Triplets dies, put a number of 1/1 counters equal to its power on each other Gruff Triplets you control. Again, there's 15 examples of these down in the deck list, but it is a good backup plan because a 5-drop commander, you can't always rely on having it in play and having the blink to protect it, so having these creatures to follow up to present some kind of pressure on the board is very useful. And with all these counters going around and tokens getting buffed from our commander and from Avengers Zendikars and stuff like that, we run a little token buff synergy package with stuff like Champion of Lambbolt getting bigger when creatures come into play and preventing anything smaller than Champion of Lambbolt from blocking any creature we control. Herald of Secret Streams giving anything with a 1/1 counter on it unblockability, or something like Master Biomancer just causing more counters to be put on stuff when they enter. I think you've got a really good deck here. You're really applying the pressure over the course of the game. Tons of bodies are hitting the floor. Tons of counters are getting put on your stuff. Yeah, even if they deal with your commander, again, blink it in response, and if you can't do that, let it go to bin, draw into the blink, and blink one of your token makers, and keep going aggro and keep going for the next. Like, it seems pretty good. Plus, forces some kind of politics. Like, I think if you're not a social player most of the time, or you don't run a lot of political cards, this might be a fun deck to build, and that's honestly the only reason I say that is because I am that player and I'm considering building it, because it'll force a cool dynamic where maybe there's a play you could do where if someone gives you their super strong creature when you play Elrond, you might be able to stop the player that's been really oppressive at your table from doing something. So you might be able to be like, hey, if I blink Elrond, will you give me that creature and will you give me that creature so I can use them to swing at this dude that's ahead, get him behind so we're all level again, and then let's say I use another blink spell to blink your creatures back under your control. You know what I mean? There's like cool like political plays with this deck too that I really, really like. So if you've got any card suggestions for Elrond, leave them down in the comments. Again, rough draft deck list are down in the description. And with that, let's move on to commander number 4 of our underplayed list today. Underplayed commander number 4 is, and I know I'm mispronouncing this more than likely, I'm not gonna ever not say it like this because it's too much fun, Papalimo Tatalimo, who is a black and a white for a 1/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Papalimo Tatalimo deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. You can also pay 4, tap, and sacrifice Papalimo Tatalimo. Each opponent who lost life this turn sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You telling me this is Orzhov Spellslinger? Yeah, every non-creature spell turns into a, not life drain, 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life, so you could throw something like Basilisk Collar onto this dude and you're gaining 3 or gaining 4 off of each trigger of this. Yikes. But this doesn't take the normal like, oh, let's run life gain, let's do the whole life gain thing, which is why I respect it. It's like an Orzhov Spellslinger group slug deck, and I love it. The whole point is you're just spellslinging to make people lose life with your commander, and you gain life, and you're running other group slug cards in Orzhov that are like, hey, are you gonna do that? Well, you're gonna lose too. Or you're gonna leave that untapped? Really? No, it's just not something I would do. Lose 4. Oh, you're gonna swing at me with those 6 creatures? Lose 6. It's not really stacks, it's group slug. We're trying to get people to lose life for game actions, which I think is Orzhov. I've definitely had other. Campbell was a big one. Campbell's Chicken Noodle Soup. That's very group sluggish. The fact that you're like spell slinging in Orzhov, this is really cool actually. So in Orzhov, we actually do have access to some pretty cool spell slinger-esque trigger cards. So stuff like Black Mage's Rod being 1 and a black, an equipment that equips for 3, job select enters with a 1/1 that it equips to, equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent and is a wizard in addition to its other types. We pretty much can turn another creature, or our commander, into another trigger of our commander whenever we spell sling. We're gonna run all the Black Mage cards because they're absolutely busted in this. Circle of Power, 3 and a black sorcery, draw 2, you lose 2, create a 0/1 black wizard creature token with, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, deal 1 damage to each opponent, and wizards you control get +1/+0 and gain lifelink until end of turn. These little black wizards are overpowered, especially in this list. Cornered by Black Mages is 1 and 2 black for a sorcery. Target opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice. Create a 0/1 Black Mage with, whenever you cast a non-creature, deal 1, gain 3. Very good. We've also got stuff like Monastery Mentor, 2 and a white, 2/2 prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, make a 1/1 monk with prowess, or something like Professor Onyx being a planeswalker with Magecraft. So whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, each opponent loses 2, and we gain 2. Not only do all of those fall under the group slug category of like slowly draining and dealing damage to opponents, they're also all triggered by spell slinging, just like our commander, so amazing. On top of this, we can run more group slug cards. Stuff like Ankh of Mishra being a 2-drop artifact that each time a player puts a land into play, it deals 2 damage to them. Of course, Blood Artist turning any creature dying into target opponent losing 1 and us gaining 1. Or the aforementioned Kambal Consul of Allocation being 1 a black and a white for a 2/3. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 and you gain 2. Yeah, you can quickly see how I'm genuinely shocked this isn't played more. This seems really fun and really good. Like if Kambals ran this much, how is Tatalimo Papalimo not ran more when it's that fun to say? I probably said it wrong. And yeah, just like any good Spellslinger deck, we're not gonna have a ton of bodies on board, at least ones that we're willing to block with. So stuff that prevents opponents from attacking us is probably gonna be good. Ghostly Prison, you're gonna wanna pay 2 if you attack me with anything. Ravaged by Raisins, you're gonna... Ravaged by Ravens. Yeah, you're gonna go ahead and lose some life if you attack me. Or something like Blind Obedience. Yeah, if you have haste, don't attack me. Throw in an Aetherflex Reservoir to start doming people for 50 damage because we're gaining so much life. Or a Mind Crank to start milling opponents whenever we activate our commander or our Black Mages. And yeah, this is easily my second favorite deck on the list. My favorite one's the next deck, because I think that one's a Spicer. Orzhov Spellslinger, rough draft deck down in the description. If you have any suggestions for this list, drop them in the comments. And with that, let's move on to Underplayed Commander number 5. With 211 decks. I'm not kidding. Do I look like I'm kidding, boy? Do I look funny? With 211 decks are the partner commanders Kodama of the East Tree and Silas Wren, Seeker Adept. Kodama of the East Tree is 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 reach. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put there with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana value from your hand onto the battlefield. And its buddy Silas Wren is 1 a blue and a black for a 2/2 Death Touch. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose target artifact in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. I think I'm gonna build this deck. I know I say that a lot. I genuinely think I'm gonna build this deck. The fact this has 211 list, what is wrong with you people? Getting to cast artifacts out of your graveyard with Silas connecting is incredibly easy and powerful. And with Kodama, when your artifacts are played from your graveyard, Kodama will trigger and you can cheat artifacts out of hand, and you're just getting like buy one get ones and tons of recursion in an artifact deck. This is just a really cool Sultai artifact deck. Build this. More people build this. This is sick. First off, I love the big boy artifacts that are going to enter for cheaper. So stuff like Metalwork Colossus being an 11-drop 10/10 that cost X less, where X is the total mana value of non-creature artifacts you control. Yeah, if we play like 3 mana rocks, this thing's gonna cost 6 less, and then with those 3 mana rocks, you can get this thing out on like turn 3 or 4. And then guess what? From your graveyard with Silas, you can cast it for the same amount, super cheap, but its mana cost stays at 11. So with our Kodama, we'll be able to cheat in. There you go, huge shit. I also really like Thought Monitor for this same reason. 6 and a blue, affinity for artifacts. 2/2 flying. When it enters, draw 2 cards. Yeah, 7-drop you could play for 1 blue in this deck. That will then cheat a 7-drop or lower into play. Like, let's say a Spine of Ishsaw. Yeah, buy 1, get 1 free. Yeah, if you, oh, did you play that big ass thing? Hey, we're having a special today. You get to also fuck up this guy as well. No, it's on us. You've also got clones like Phyrexian Metamorph or Sculpting Steel, which can enter the battlefield as our artifacts, which I believe still retain the mana cost of the thing they're copying when they enter and trigger Kodama. Correct me if I'm wrong. I still think they're worth running either way, but I'm pretty sure it works that way, which makes them incredibly overpowered in this. Tons of awesome artifact synergy cards like Mystic Forge, letting you play artifacts off the top of your deck. Esoteric Duplicator, letting you create token copies of artifacts you play. Or stuff like Mirrored and Besieged, turning your artifacts into 1/1 colorless mirror artifact tokens, or winning you the game at the end of turn if you have 15 or more artifacts in grave. Someone board wipes, you go, oh, matter of fact, I'm gonna drop this. Pass the turn. Oh, wait. You lose. And then, of course, my favorite thing in the world in any artifact deck, especially this artifact deck that can trigger Kodama and cares about big mana costs, but more importantly, those big mana costs coming out for cheaper. Love me some artifact cost reducers. Ethereum Sculptors in the deck, reducing artifact cost by 1. Foundry Inspectors in the deck, reducing artifact cost by 1. Karn Legacy Reforged in the deck, adding us a bunch of waste for the amount of artifacts we control so we can play bigger artifacts and cheat out more stuff with Kodama. Ooh. And with Silas and Kodama firing off, not only are we going to flood the board, we also get to run, because we're in Sultai, tons of good recursion. Stuff like Anrakir, the Traveler, being 4 and a black for a 4/4. Whenever it attacks, you may cast an artifact spell from your hand or graveyard by paying life equal to its mana cost. Of course, we got Junk Diver, Scrap Taller, and Mirror Retriever, along with stuff like Emery, Lurker of the Lock. I seriously think you have a very cool artifact list. Like, as a Sultai player, I have tried building an artifact deck multiple times. I tried going like Azorius artifacts. I tried going Azit artifacts, Jeskai artifacts. It was never hitting. And I realized I'm a Simic player. I guess artifacts aren't for me. Come to find out, I can still do artifacts. And this is underplayed through the floorboards. 211 decks. If you have some suggestions for this, I'm sure you do, because it's a banger list already, and it's just a rough draft. You can check that out, description. Leave those suggestions in the comments. And with that, let's move on to the final 6th underplayed commander of the video. The final underplayed commander of today's video, with 208 decks, is Dragonlord Silumgar. Dragonlord Silumgar is 4, a blue and a black for a 3/5 flying death touch. When it enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature or planeswalker for as long as you control Dragonlord Silumgar. You know what? I kind of get it. I kind of get why it's not ran so much, okay? In a bubble, when you read this commander, you go like, it's a fun ability. I'd run that in like the 99 or in like a 60 card format. As my commander, a little boring. But then when you start building this thing, I think it actually is really cool. So at its core, it is just a theft deck. It is all about stealing your opponent's stuff, which is fun. There are some like better Grixis options. There's definitely some better Dimir options if you're going for strictly power. But a lot of those options don't offer you a straight up theft on ETB on a pretty good body. So I think it's definitely worth talking about. So first things first, we got to secure the bag. We got to start stealing the opponent's stuff. So we've got stuff like Agent of Treachery, of course, being 5 and 2 blue, 2/3. When it enters, gain control of target permanent. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. Can do, buddy. We've got stuff like Mind Flayer being 3 and 2 blue, 3/3. When it enters, gain control of something for as long as you control Mind Flayer. Sower of Temptation being 2 and 2 blue for a 2/2 flying that does the same thing. Or a card like Kyaga the Tide Star being 4 and a blue, 5/5 flying. When it dies, gain control of target creature, which is a pretty good threat to drop on the table, but also interacts really well with our Feign Death package we run in the deck. So we run cards like Feign Death. The next time a creature would die, return it to the battlefield. Not Dead at All. Malakir Rebirth. Return to action. There's tons of these cards. We run all of them. If someone tries to deal with Silumgar to get their creature back, we drop one of these on Silumgar, it returns into play, we take the creature anyway, or if there's something better, we take the better thing. Or in the case of Kyaga, if Kyaga is about to die, drop a Feign Death on it, get the death trigger, gain control of something, and then have a Kyaga still. Pretty good. We also run the clones that can clone legendaries, because getting more Silumgars in play seems like it'll be pretty good for stealing stuff. So stuff like Autom Soldier being a 4 and 2 blue clone that doesn't care about legend rule. Stuff like Spark Double doing the same, or Sakashima the Imposter, or Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. All these clones don't care if it's legendary. So we're just getting more Silumgars, which is good in this deck. This deck also runs a Blink package with stuff like Ghostly Flicker, Planar Incision, all the stuff we talked about with the Simic deck. And I hear you saying, Nick, why are we running Blink? I understand Silumgar's an ETB trigger, but once Silumgar leaves with the exile the Blink, it's just going to give back the thing you stole, so you're not really getting anything out of that. You would be correct. You would be correct normally. But that's why in this deck, after we secure the bag, steal the creature, we need to sack the bag, okay? Because once we spend all that dough, we don't need the bag anymore. We gotta sack that bag. So we run sack outlets, like Altar of Dementia, turning a sacked creature into mill for our opponents, Ashnod's Altar, turning a sacked creature into mana ramp, stuff like Dread Return, having a flashback for sacking a creature and then lets us return a creature from our graveyard into play, or something as powerful as Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, letting us sack a creature to tutor our library for a card. We run a bunch of sack outlets in this deck. We're going to gain control of the creature, use them for as long as we want for combat, for their abilities, and then when we're done with them, we sack them to our sack outlets, we blink the Salumgar or whatever else we have in play to gain control of stuff, and we gain control of a new batch of creatures that we then use, abuse, and sack, baby. Also, throw a Dictative Erebos and a Grave Pact in here because I feel like the salt in the wound isn't quite salty enough yet. So yeah, there you go. There are 6 very underplayed commanders and a good little outline of how their decks would function. Again, I do have rough drafts of these decks down in the description if you want to take a more in-depth look of a rough idea of how one of these decks would look. If you have any suggestions for any of these decks, drop them in the comments. If you're not subscribed already, we're trying to hit 20K by the end of the year. Call me an idiot, call me a fool, but I think we can still do it. If you want to show the channel a little bit of additional support, as well as being able to submit your commander decks for Friday night deck reviews and some of your favorite obscure cards for the obscure card list here on the channel, maybe consider becoming a YouTube member, Patreon member. Starts as low as $1, helps me out a ton. If you liked this video, let me know down in the comments. You guys have been super vocal about the content that you guys have been liking, the content you haven't been liking, and you guys have been showing a ton of support. So keep that up because that's the most important thing you could do. Huge thanks to the names you can see flying past my face, and I'll see you guys on Sunday. Peace.